People of Earth, how are you?
Just a heads up, you guys may want to save, or at least maybe even purchase or trade for old or dead subs. So this one was brought back to me. It looks great, right? But this happened. It actually caught on fire, and just by looking at it, you can hear the owner say things like, "I barely had it turned up. This is your fault, Patrick. You build shitty subs." So, you know, and that's fine. He's welcome to his opinion. I differ, but that's okay. And instead of paying me the $60 he owes me, he just gave me back the whole woofer. So we're gonna go ahead and rebuild that. But yeah, save old speakers. Like this is from an old BL from Phi. But you just find things that go wrong with them and then try to avoid those things, or you know, experiment, build it different. See what you can do. Alright, so real quick, I rebuilt this Cerwin Vega Stroker. One of the, they really shouldn't have used the TI frame, but they did. The thing about the TI frame is that it has a large suspension, 10-inch spider, and it allows for 3-inch peak-to-peak or even more, 4-inch peak-to-peak excursion. But the motor that they used is too short, and so if you use a long coil, it'll bottom out, and so you end up having to use the regular 40 millimeter tall coil. So the TI frame ends up being just for looks. It's kind of a waste. But you know, people buy design or people buy looks over performance every day, so that's just part of it. I rebuilt it. The guy was pushing it really hard, Oscar, and the leads on both the negatives for some reason came undone. Solder joints aren't really meant for high tension, so I got to figure out what he was doing, but it's very difficult to access the leads after the cone is on. So what I did is I went ahead and cut the cone, and then I'll duct tape this all back together and it'll look great. Joking, although my haters loved hearing that. What I did was I cut off the top of the cone, and what I'll do is I'll go and grind all of this off and basically just replace the cone, which is it's easier and faster than cutting all these soft parts out and waiting for the coil to dry overnight. So I'm just going to resolder these, maybe even change the terminals out to the long post type that we use, and then I'll put it all back together and I'll show you a picture. Thanks. Okay, so I got these, there's a lot of glue in there. They use both lock washers and glue. I don't blame them, because terminals get a lot of vibration. I went ahead and cut this one. This spider is just from Ultra, or Lord of Bass on eBay. I chiseled all this out, and I'm going to replace it with this terminal, which is the standard. I think Phi was one of the first companies to start using this. One little thing on these, I use heat shrink right here, and I also enlarge the holes just to make sure they don't make contact with the frame. There's not really a risk of arc, so that takes a couple thousand volts, but I like to do it just for peace of mind, I guess. Remember, positive is always on the left, and this one only has 2 holes in the tab, but I'll put 2 wires or 2 leads in there, and then I'll fold the third in between and just solder the whole thing together. Let's see, what else do I want to say? Oh, that's it. Oh, shit, that's right. Getting in here is tough, and so I'm going to forego the typical lock washer and regular nut and go with a lock nut. I forget what the other tie lock. That's the other one I think it's called. Anyways, just a little tip for getting down in those tight spaces. You can use a soda straw. This one I think is from Jack in the Box, but I'm sure you can experiment to find one that will work for you. But basically, you put it over there. It's a standard 9mm or 7mm M4 nut, and then you put it in there, and you're able to screw it. So that's the little trick. Another quick note is what I will do is when I grind all this off, and it's going to be a little difficult, but it's a good challenge. But when you put the new cone on, you're going to go ahead and shim this back up. I use Teflon shims. You can get them at McMaster-Carr, but you can use your typical manila folder or whatever you guys use at home. The other thing is, don't ever poke on a speaker on the side. You go, oh, my speaker, something's wrong with it. You're an idiot. You're tweaking the gap, and so it'll hit the pole every time. So first of all, don't poke on anybody's speakers. You're a dick if you're doing that. Second, if you're going to press on it, make sure you have even distribution of weight all around and you press down like that. Third, don't do that because not all cones are made equally. This one is actually, again, this one's from lower to base. It's very thick, it's very strong. If you were to do that with some aluminum cones, they can survive being a speaker, but then you're going to leave dents, finger marks all in it. You're an asshole, so don't do that. So we're at the grinding bench, or grinding area, I should say. Oh, I wanted to show this off. This looks fucking awesome. This is our original blackjack cone with a glass fiber cap, and this is a T2. But I used to just trim the outside and put it in there. I hate using this frame now. There's a lot of problems with it. I don't like it, and we totally gut it now and tap the top plate and put on the TI frame. But doesn't that look fucking good? God, I love that. I think I only did it like once or twice, and I realized what a pain in the ass it is. So, plus that frame gets ugly. I like using a gasket, which brings me to my point here. Cleaning woofers, okay? So don't cut towards yourself because you will stab yourself. You always want to cut away. And then what you want to do is, see if I can do this. So I like to go this way with it, right? And then what you do is you use your other hand to, like your thumb, to reinforce. Let me see if I can do this. Hold this in my mouth. There you go. So make sure your knife is sharp too. These are retractable ones. Buy those. When you find them on sale, you can find them for $1. We also use the snap blades when getting into the spider packs because you got to go deep. These work good too. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and just remove this. Then I'm going to grind all that, prep it. Don't worry about, for some reason, a lot of manufacturers don't even grind this, and then they end up with shitty glue joints. I know Kicker and Alpine both, they just come right off. It's dumb. So, and I know it's extra money or time or whatever. TC Sounds used to use a mill, and they would just mill it real quick. Or you can also use a lathe if you're going to do, 100 of them at a time. But we just use a 2-inch angle grinder and grind it all the way down to the metal. That's what the CA bonds to. Really good. We use CA, which will cut you right there, to bond for the surround. Also, quick note, if you're going to use a rubber surround, make sure you prep it. We use the angle grinder to prep them, rough them up a little bit so that they adhere better. Quick note about safety, you can pick these items up for pennies at Harbor Freight. Earplugs. Keep those ears working. Don't be like Steve Mead. Eyeglasses. Keep your eyes working. It's actually better when you're grinding to use a face shield. Yes, it looks totally stupid. However, it will save your face. Getting a wire in your eyeball is not cool. That's it. Be safe. Also, the ingredients used to make CA are also used in tear gas. And so when you're grinding CA, it gives off vapors, so you want to have a fan and use it in a vented area. I'm going to go ahead and open up the door and then aim my cool fan at me, so that way I don't breathe that shit. Alright, after several minutes of grinding with no mask, even though I had a fan, this is still a very long process. And so what I'm going to do is just stay up late and recone the whole thing regular. So, wah, wah. But just so you know, you can just change out the cone if you want. It's possible. I mean, not like bare vid's possible. Dude, that guy recycles everything. Okay, that was quick. Took like 3 minutes. It's all cleaned, ready to prep. You'll notice on here that there's some big holes. On the loader base frames, they also have some holes like that. Those are to use hardware to hold in the spider spacer. You'll also see on some Sundown, also American base, and probably, you know, the Massive and what's the other one? Audio Q. Those are all made by the same vendor, or the same people anyway. But a lot of reasons why they bolt this to it is not for strength. It's so that they don't have to clamp it and wait. So if you just bolt it in there, then it's done. You can actually ship the driver wet if you really wanted to, which some manufacturers do because they're cheap. But a look at the voice coil. This is the LVS, also known as Elvis from Memphis Coil. The reason I chose it is because it's a standard 40 millimeter 3-inch voice coil, which fits this motor and fits its excursion type. The other thing is that it has a very long former, which is required when using a frame like the TI frame. So these are actually really nice spaced, 0.65 inches. We sell those spacers. I'm actually going to try the, maybe, actually now that I look at it, maybe not. I was going to try the 1-inch spacers from Ultra Audio / Loader Base, because they have a new 15-inch cone out, red stitch, that's a little bit more shallow than the normal ones that are really thick, the 36 model. But I'm seeing that this meets right at the neck, so I don't think I have the room to go with 1-inch. So we'll just stick with the 0.65. This is the Nomex spider. This is actually Nomex. Nomex isn't any. The only thing, it's not a better product. It just lasts longer. So if lasting longer is your goal, then yes, Nomex is a better material. Some people think it's better because it doesn't catch on fire. If you're catching woofers on fire, that's the least of your problems. You're using your woofer wrong if your woofers are catching on fire. Nomex is good just because it lasts long. It also holds the resin, which means it holds the resin better. And so sometimes they can be stiffer, but most of the time they're softer. But this one is actually pretty stiff. But after use, it's fine. This one is more soft. This one's more for show. And so we use this as the control, and we epoxy both top and bottom, and that's what limits the excursion. This one is, like I said, just for show. You could say it is for balance to keep it more linear, but the problem is that the only time you see non-linear performance is when the coil is out of the gap, and the coil should never be out of the gap. If your coil is out of the gap, you're using it wrong. So that's it. That's copper. We'll recycle that. Oh. Okay, back at the build table. So here we got our loader base Nomex spider. I do like the neck on this. It allows for a nice deep pocket of devil's jizz epoxy to get in there and build up. You can also put a little bit here just to kind of encapsulate that material. One thing I don't like is that they're oversized, and so whenever I use them, I have to cut my spacers to fit them. In fact, they don't even fit on the bottom landing when using their spacers, so they have to go on the top. And there's nothing wrong with putting the leaded or leaded, whatever you want to call it, spider on the bottom. It's no big deal. Just got to make little channels or holes in the spacer for them to get out and terminate to the leads. I decided just to use the shoestring one because people love these. This spider is actually more soft than the other one was. Again, it's just for show. You got all this current capability, and it's super soft. So we're going to get some made that are like badass, and we may even just buy a bunch of surplus from Sundown because they have a bunch. If you need some, I can't sell them to you, but we can get some made that you can buy. Coil. Again, this is the LVS coil made by, I should say designed by, and then the coil was made by PE, which is Precision Econowind in Florida. But the design was by NCA Labs up in Northern California. So Northern California Labs, Audio Labs, I think so. NCA Labs, good guys, American made all the Memphis stuff. I found out about them when the Chinese vendor sent me their samples by mistake, so I got to peek at their next level Memphis stuff. But that was years ago. Oh, another quick note on these, on the holes. I just removed the hardware. I don't use them. These are quite larger than the ones that you find from lower to base. So what we do is we just put tape over them, so that way you don't get glue drips. Some people complain that I have glue drips. Yeah, go fuck yourself. If you don't want glue drips, build it yourself. I'll sell you all the parts. So, but other than that, this is a really good motor. It's basically the TC9 Plus, which is a dual 1-inch slugs. We have a version coming out. I'm building an homage to the HCCA 10D, originally designed by TC Sounds, that we'll have in a little bit. I'll show you some pictures here in a little bit. But yeah, so now what I'm going to do is center it concentrically with a Teflon shim, and then I'm going to center it vertically. I still measure, you guys. It's the best way to go. Buy a silver Sharpie, and what you do is you take the thickness of the top plate, which I think this one is, I want to say it's 10 millimeter, no more than 20 millimeter. And what you do is divide that number in half. So that way it's centered, because there's going to be a positive half and then a negative half of where the top plate is centered. So if it's a 10 millimeter top plate, you want to go 5 millimeters north of center. So you got to find center. So this is 40 millimeters, so you're going to find 20, and then you just go 5 millimeters north and then mark it. And what that's going to do is allow you to poke it in and figure out where it needs to be relative to the top plate. So you want it to match up and be centered with the top plate, which is actually right about there. If you're badass like me, you can just eyeball it. But I still like to use the marks just to be safe. And then so anyways, they get centered, and then we'll build it out. So just like I've shown you in other videos, if you guys have questions, just fucking email me, robotunderground@yahoo.com. Sometimes I don't get the messages through YouTube or the Facebook, so just email me direct. If you're really in a panic, I mean, that's the best way to get results, because I can send you pictures. You can call me. I'm shorter on time when you call me, but my phone number is 602-312-6504. That's my personal cell phone number, and I answer it a lot. So if you really need tech support, just call me and I'll give you tech support. Again, we're a school. We're here to teach you something, and most of it is just to be independent so that you can stay home and build woofers and be with your family. That's my end goal. So that's what I hope to get from these videos. But I've been working on a lot of cool stuff too. Those are kicker. They were L7s, but I've turned them all into CVX rebuilds. Just if you didn't know, the L7 is the same as the CVX. They use the same motor. And these are all the 12-inch motors. The biggest motor they make is the 15-inch, and it's still only 2.5 inches in diameter, so it only handles about 600, 650 RMS. Lately, the power ratings on speakers have been just ridiculous. If you read the fine print on the kicker box, it says maximum amplifier recommendation. It doesn't say power handling. So watch those ratings. Let's get on with the build, Patrick. All right, quick note. When using these, they have a lot of resin in them, so they're stiff initially. You want to do what's called a goatsy to them, which is you can stretch them out a little bit on the inside. You can also use a razor. I know Corey Dean of SPL uses a razor to soften them up. It doesn't increase surface area, but what it does is it just softens it up so that you don't get the saddle effect or cowboy hat effect when you're putting it on there. You want it to be as flat as possible. This one actually comes kind of bent a little bit, so you may want to rough it up. You're not going to hurt it. Oh, that's the other thing too. If your spiders break or are known to break because they're so fucking stiff, like Digital Designs, You guys are dicks. They don't need to be that. You don't need to even break in. The whole break-in thing is a myth. It's bullshit. Do the TL small parameters change? Yes. Technically, yes. But the box requirement or box recommendation does not change. So you don't really need to break in your speakers. Just use them normal. Will they change over time? Yes. They'll get a little more sensitive. That's because they're using a soft suspension. Soft suspensions are great. JL Audio uses them all the time. They use a single floppy spider, and it works great for them. So don't get all weird about breaking in a woofer and all this kind of stuff. And if they're telling you that, there's something wrong with their product. So I know DD uses really tight gaps, which looks good on paper, but in real life it fails because it rubs a lot. The other thing is the suspensions are super stiff, which is fine for SPL, but not for daily. So whatever, not everybody's fucking competing, Jesus. Anyways, my note for this was the shim on this is 1 millimeter. It's a 1 millimeter shim, Teflon shim. It's a little loose. It wobbles a little bit if you push it, but mostly I'm concerned that it's not going to stay up when I'm pushing the spider down on it. So a little trick that I do is I push my finger in here and then give pressure to it to hold it in place while I push the spider down onto it. The other thing, like I said, you want to soften up this edge so that it slides on. It shouldn't be too tight, it shouldn't be too loose. It should be like a nice Goldilocks fit. If it's a little too tight, again, fray it with your razor so that you don't get that tension when you're pushing it on. So because you may have to trim it a little bit depending on what spider you're using. Again, I custom build all these woofers, and our soft parts change all the time because I'm not a big company and we don't do production yet. So you just kind of go with the flow on these parts. So because if you try to push it on like that, it's going to go all the way down the bottom. That's no good. I should probably still even rough this one up even more. So like I said, you can also do the goatsy. Just be careful with that. Some of the spiders are so soft that you'll deform them. Other ones like this one will take it and probably soften up that edge. Anyways, okay, we got it on there nice and level. Another way to self-level these is, well, making sure that this doesn't move, whether you support it with your finger or however you do it, but you want to be able to rotate the spider a little bit, either back and forth or one way, it doesn't matter. And what that does is it just sort of levels it around to make sure that it's not, you know, one way or the other, kind of wobbly. What I'll do now is, because this side doesn't really get epoxied, and you can see I kind of goat-seated it a little hard, what I'll do is I'll actually, I don't want to say tack weld, but seal this up with some CA here right on the edge. And what that's also going to do is help from getting glue drips. Sometimes you get glue drips around the leads, the little humps right there in the middle, or I'm sorry, on the side, on the edges of the leads. You'll get glue drips or epoxy drips because we flip them upside down. All right, so this is cured overnight. It's ready to go. So, and I've taped off my frame. You can use the blue masking tape or the regular masking tape. So what we're going to do is make sure that our leads are lined up with the terminals, and then we have our spacer. It's already been broken, so it's going to leave a little bit of a gap. I like to hide that gap behind the terminal so that way you can't see it from any of the windows. And then we'll clamp that in place. What I'm going to do is just lay down a bead of super glue, CA, on the frame, and then one on the spider, and then clamp that in. Okay, all clamped in. I sprayed the accelerator on it. I'm going to put it in front of the fan for about 45 minutes to an hour. Let it cure for a bit, and then I'm going to come back and put the second spider on. Alright, so I laid down a bead of glue, put on the spider, laid down another bead of glue, and then put on the, it's a 1/4 inch spacer. And so in this case we're using it as a clamp ring. And so now I'm going to terminate the leads and right here. So I'm also going to cut this on the side so it comes down, and that way when the cone comes down it can go down as far as possible and hit that, hopefully to hit the top of the spider so that it's a triple joint, a real triple joint. Oh yeah, quick tip. So this is a regular electrical wire. multi-strand. What I did was I took one strand and then I twisted it around so that these all stay together, and then I used my lineman pliers to give them a squish so they're really well bonded. And then what I'll do is I'll thread this one through the right there through the hole. That'll hold it right up against it. I'm going to trim these outside first before I stick it in there, and then I'll solder it. Oh yeah! Okay, so what you want to do is neck out the cone so that it fits on there snug, but you know, not super tight, just snug. And then what I do is I mark it so that I know the alignment of which one. Now you can do it a couple ways. You can guess here. What I like to do is just look down there and see where that thing's coming up, and then you mark where it's coming up. Sometimes I'll do 2 marks on where to cut. So we'll look again and about right there. And then I'll show you in a minute. I go back and I cut with some dikes right there, and that creates like a little flap, and it's going to flip up, and that's where the leads come through to the cone. So that's a much better way to do it than just tucking them into that top roll. We'll also put epoxy down there to hold the spider in place. And then once we get these up here, we can finish with some cotton stuffing and flip these down and make sure there's no leaks, and then we'll just put epoxy in here. Okay, so this is what the tabs look like. So, and then what I'm going to do now is put a bead of epoxy right here, and then I'm going to, don't glue it yet, don't glue it on the surround yet. You want to put that on first and deal with the center stuff first. I'll do a little step by step, and then once that's done, then you want to flip the surround up and do the surround. Alright, I got the cone on. The ugly little tabs are coming up through the holes. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and stuff cotton. My wife actually bought the wrong ones, but I've been using them anyway. There's little pads. I like the circle ones because you can cut in a spiral and make a longer piece, but I cut these in half. I don't know if you can see that, the little, anyways, little strips, and then I just shove the strips in there, and then as I go back, if I can bend this to this, I trim the top, and if you can, then I fold that door back down, and so that way no epoxy leaks out. And then you basically, I mean, you don't want to overfill it, but you want to cover up anything that can, like, that's electrical. And then you go back and you flip this up all the way around, run your glue bead, flop it over, put your clamp on, and your, or was it your ring clamp device, hold down device, and then some more clamps, and then it's got to sit for at least a couple hours. This guy's actually picking this up in a few hours, so it's got to sit, and then I got to come back when this is hardened and leave the clamps on, and then trim the former, put the inner cap on, put a bead on that, and then basically just wait for that to cure, and then put the outer cap on. Here's what the inner cap looks like on this one. This is an Orion HCCA motor on an 18 Ti frame with the Anaconda surround. And then I have one over here for Josh Pastrana, which is Big Perm. We're doing it in Neo. Just waiting for Patrick. 18 pounds of Neo, so that should be interesting. I have a Gauss meter though to see how powerful my magnetizer is on one zap versus, you know, 5 zaps to get those particles aligned. Other than that, I'm just building this. This will be done today. This is, by the way, this is the Ultra Audio new shallow 15 cone, which I think is 3.5. I usually use the 3.6, which is deeper, and I especially like it on the 12-spoke frames with our new spider. Let's see if I have any of our new spiders. These guys. So we got some 10s that move like 2.5 inches, so, and that's on an 8-inch suspension, so they're pretty badass. Really surprised at them. Other than that, TSPs don't really change. Well, they do change, but the box requirement does not change. So the box requirement will still be anywhere from 3 to 5.5 cubic feet, and then tuned at whatever frequency you want. For most people, it's going to be daily, so you don't want to go too low because then you lose a lot of energy because you're not going to hear anything that low. So I recommend anywhere from the low 30s to up to about 36. Anything above that, it starts to get a little more punchy. But if you want, you know, like if you listen to a lot of kick drum, a lot of rock, then that's fine. It's good. But you can do the same thing with the bass boost, so it doesn't really matter. Anyways, thanks for watching.